in the vast and storied history of the Roman Empire. Few emperors have left a legacy as enduring and admired as that of Marcus Aurelius. Known not only as a powerful ruler, but also as a thoughtful and reflective philosopher, Marcus Aurelius stands out among Rome's great leaders. His life was a unique blend of imperial responsibility and deep personal contemplation, a rare combination that earned him the title of the Philosopher Emperor. Born into a noble Roman family in 121 AD, Marcus Aurelius would rise to lead an empire at its height, all while remaining committed to the principles of Stoicism, a philosophy that taught him to seek wisdom, live in harmony with nature, and accept the ebb and flow of life with calm and reason. Unlike many of his predecessors and successors, Marcus was not driven by conquest or the pursuit of glory. Instead, he sought to rule with justice, compassion, and humility, guided by the timeless lessons of ancient philosophy. But his reign was not without its challenges. Faced with wars, plagues, and personal tragedies, Marcus Aurelius navigated the turbulent waters of his time with remarkable grace and resilience. Even as the weight of the empire rested on his shoulders, he found solace in quiet moments of reflection, recording his thoughts in what would become one of the most famous philosophical works of all time, the Meditations. Written in the solitude of his military campaigns, this collection of personal writings offers a window into the mind of an emperor striving to live a virtuous life, despite the trials of leadership. Throughout his life, Marcus Aurelius embodied the Stoic virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. He believed in the importance of duty, not only to the state but also to oneself, and his rule was a testament to the idea that true power lies not in wealth or military might, but in the strength of character and the pursuit of moral integrity. Chapter 1. Early Life and Education. Marcus Aurelius was born on April 26, 121 AD in Rome, into a family of noble lineage. His full name at birth was Marcus Annius Catilius Severus, though he would later take on different names as he rose through the Roman political hierarchy. His father, Marcus Annius Verus, was a prominent figure in Roman politics, holding the position of praetor, but he passed away when Marcus was only 3 years old. After his father's death, Marcus was raised by his mother, Domitia Calvilla, and his paternal grandfather, Marcus Annius Verus, who took on the responsibility of his upbringing and education. From an early age, Marcus Aurelius displayed a keen intellect and a deep curiosity for learning. He was particularly interested in philosophy, which would later become a defining element of his life. His education followed the typical path of Roman aristocrats, but his approach to learning was far from ordinary. His tutors included some of the most learned men of his time, such as the renowned orator Marcus Cornelius Fronto and the Stoic philosopher Junius Rusticus. Through these teachers, Marcus was introduced to a wide range of subjects, including rhetoric, law, literature, and philosophy. It was during these formative years that Marcus first encountered the teachings of Stoicism, a philosophical school that emphasized reason, self-control, and the acceptance of fate. Under the guidance of his tutors, Marcus began to adopt Stoic principles, which stressed living in harmony with nature and maintaining emotional resilience in the face of life's challenges. Stoicism, with its emphasis on virtue and wisdom, would become the foundation of Marcus Aurelius's personal philosophy and his approach to leadership. A particularly influential figure in Marcus's early education was Diognetus, a teacher who introduced him to the philosophical way of life. Inspired by Diognetus, Marcus even adopted the dress and habits of a philosopher, donning a rough Greek cloak and sleeping on the ground to practice discipline. Although his mother eventually convinced him to return to the comforts of a bed, this period marked the beginning of his lifelong commitment to Stoic philosophy. As a child, Marcus also trained in physical activities such as wrestling and boxing, and he joined the Salii, a prestigious priesthood dedicated to Mars, the Roman god of war. These activities reflected his upbringing as a Roman aristocrat, expected to balance intellectual pursuits with physical strength and martial readiness. Despite his growing interest in philosophy, Marcus understood the importance of being well-versed in the martial and administrative duties that would later define his role as emperor. In 138 AD, when Marcus was just 17, his life changed dramatically. The reigning emperor, Hadrian, who had no biological children, had adopted Antoninus Pius as his heir, and in turn, Antoninus adopted Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus. This adoption secured Marcus's place as the future emperor of Rome. Although he had been raised to pursue a career in public service, Marcus was now thrust into the imperial line, where he would eventually rise to the throne. As a young man, Marcus was both diligent and humble. He approached his new role with a sense of duty and responsibility, though he often struggled with the demands of public life. He once wrote in his meditations that he had to constantly remind himself not to be swayed by the power and privilege that came with his position. "See that you are not carried away into being Caesar," he warned himself, "and take care not to be dyed in the purple." Chapter 2. The Rise to Power. Marcus Aurelius's rise to power was marked by a sense of destiny, preparation, and a deep understanding of the responsibilities that awaited him. His ascent was carefully orchestrated by some of the most powerful figures in the Roman Empire, setting the stage for one of Rome's most reflective and philosophical rulers. The turning point in Marcus's life came in 138 AD, when Emperor Hadrian, who had ruled for over 2 decades, was nearing the end of his life. Hadrian, recognizing that he had no biological heir, was compelled to secure the future of the Roman Empire by naming a successor. Initially, he chose Lucius Ceionius Commodus, later known as Lucius Aelius, as his heir, but after Lucius Aelius' untimely death, Hadrian looked to a new candidate, Antoninus Pius. This decision would forever change Marcus's future. Antoninus Pius was a respected and capable senator, and when Hadrian adopted him, he was tasked with an additional responsibility, adopting 2 young men who would succeed him, Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus. At the age of 17, Marcus Aurelius was brought into the imperial fold through this adoption, cementing his place in the line of succession. Though still a teenager, Marcus suddenly found himself as one of the most important figures in Rome, destined to become emperor after Antoninus Pius. Marcus's official adoption by Antoninus Pius came with new titles and responsibilities. He was renamed Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, symbolizing his official connection to the imperial family. Alongside Lucius Verus, Marcus was groomed for the throne. However, it was clear that Marcus stood out for his philosophical inclination and gravitas, even at a young age. As part of his preparation, Marcus received a comprehensive education in statecraft, administration, and military matters, designed to mold him into a capable ruler. Antoninus Pius, himself a model of calm and steady leadership, became a paternal figure to Marcus, guiding him through the intricacies of ruling the vast Roman Empire. Marcus' respect and admiration for Antoninus were profound, and he would later credit his adoptive father for teaching him the virtues of duty, patience, and fairness. The reign of Antoninus Pius was relatively peaceful and stable, providing Marcus with the opportunity to refine his skills without the immediate pressures of war or rebellion. During this time, Marcus served in various political roles, learning firsthand the complexities of Roman governance. He held important titles such as quaestor, consul, and eventually princeps senatus, the senior senator who guided discussions in the Roman Senate. Through these roles, Marcus became intimately familiar with the workings of the Roman state, always applying the Stoic principles he had learned in his youth. Despite the peaceful nature of Antoninus Pius's reign, Marcus Aurelius was keenly aware of the responsibilities that would one day rest on his shoulders. He recognized that the relative tranquility of Antoninus's rule was an exception rather than the rule in Roman history, and he prepared himself for the inevitable challenges that might arise when he ascended to power. Marcus remained humble and diligent, always conscious of the Stoic teachings that urged him to prioritize the common good over personal ambition. In 161 AD, after nearly 23 years of mentorship under Antoninus Pius, the emperor passed away. Marcus Aurelius, at the age of 40, was finally ready to assume the mantle of leadership. However, in an unusual move for Roman politics, Marcus did not rule alone. True to Antoninus's wishes, Marcus shared the imperial throne with his adoptive brother Lucius Verus, making them co-emperors, an arrangement that had not been seen before in Rome's history. Although Marcus was the more senior of the two emperors and clearly the philosophical and moral leader, he respected Lucius Verus's position. Together, they navigated the early years of their joint reign, dealing with challenges such as the outbreak of the Parthian War in the East. While Lucius took charge of the military campaign against the Parthians, Marcus focused on domestic affairs, administration, and the governance of the empire from Rome. Despite their differing roles, the co-reign of Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus was harmonious. Marcus' Stoic philosophy guided his approach to shared leadership, ensuring that ego or competition did not undermine their partnership. He believed that power should be exercised with wisdom and restraint, and this approach would come to define his reign. Chapter 3. Co-Emperor with Lucius Verus. When Marcus Aurelius ascended to the throne in 161 AD, he did so under unique circumstances. For the first time in Roman history, the empire would be ruled by two emperors, Marcus Aurelius and his adoptive brother, Lucius Verus. This arrangement, though unconventional, was rooted in the wishes of their predecessor, Antoninus Pius, and sought to ensure stability in the vast and complex Roman Empire. While the Roman world was accustomed to singular rulers who wielded supreme power, Marcus and Lucius approached their co-rule with mutual respect and cooperation. From the start, it was clear that Marcus, with his deep intellectual background and philosophical leanings, was the senior partner in this arrangement. Nevertheless, Marcus valued the principle of shared leadership and sought to avoid any sense of superiority over Lucius. His Stoic philosophy emphasized duty, humility, and harmony, which influenced how he approached their joint rule. Lucius Verus, in contrast to Marcus, was known for his more indulgent and less disciplined lifestyle. He enjoyed the pleasures of Roman aristocracy, including lavish feasts, hunting, and entertainment. However, he was also an able leader when the situation called for it. The first major test of their co-rule came almost immediately after they assumed power. Rome was drawn into a major conflict in the East known as the Parthian War. The Parthians, who had long been a rival power to Rome in the Near East, launched an invasion of the Roman client state of Armenia. This threatened Rome's eastern borders and required a swift and decisive military response. Lucius Verus, despite his reputation for enjoying the luxuries of imperial life, was dispatched to lead the campaign. Though Marcus had more experience in administration and philosophy, it was Lucius who took charge of military operations in the east. While Lucius commanded the armies in the east, Marcus Aurelius remained in Rome, overseeing the administrative and political affairs of the empire. This division of labor worked effectively, with Marcus ensuring that the daily governance of the empire ran smoothly, while Lucius focused on defending Rome's territorial interests. Lucius, however, did not lead the military campaigns directly, but delegated much of the battlefield responsibility to experienced generals, such as Avidius Cassius, who would go on to achieve significant victories against the Parthians. The campaign against the Parthians lasted several years, from 161 to 166 AD, and ultimately resulted in a Roman victory. Roman forces successfully recaptured Armenia and reestablished control over important territories, securing the eastern borders. Despite the campaign's success, Lucius's reputation as a military commander remained mixed, as he was often criticized for his personal indulgences while others led the actual fighting. Nonetheless, Marcus Aurelius showed no signs of jealousy or rivalry. Instead, he continued to support Lucius and maintained a strong partnership, adhering to the Stoic principle of focusing on the collective good rather than personal glory. However, the victory in the Parthian War came at a high cost. Roman troops returning from the east brought back more than just the spoils of war. They also brought with them the Antonine Plague, a devastating epidemic that would sweep through the empire. The exact nature of the plague remains unclear, but historians believe it may have been either smallpox or measles. The plague ravaged the Roman population, leading to widespread death and suffering. It further strained the empire's resources, with cities and towns struggling to cope with the sheer number of casualties. As the plague spread across the empire, Marcus Aurelius faced one of the greatest crises of his reign. His leadership during this time was marked by compassion and resilience. He took steps to provide aid to afflicted cities, directing resources and manpower to alleviate the suffering. Yet, despite his efforts, the plague would continue to haunt the empire for years to come, contributing to a sense of instability that defined much of Marcus's reign. Throughout this period, Marcus and Lucius worked together to maintain order in the empire. Although their temperaments differed greatly, Marcus, the Philosopher Emperor, and Lucius, the more hedonistic and carefree leader, their co-rule remained largely free of conflict. Marcus's Stoic principles, which emphasized tolerance, duty, and self-restraint, played a significant role in ensuring that their partnership remained harmonious. The success of their joint reign was a testament to Marcus's ability to balance power with humility. He could have easily overshadowed Lucius, given his greater administrative skill and philosophical wisdom, but Marcus chose to lead with collaboration and respect. His ability to maintain peace and cooperation with Lucius, despite their differences, was a reflection of his broader approach to leadership, one grounded in the Stoic virtues of patience and fairness. Tragically, their co-rule came to an abrupt end in 169 AD, when Lucius Verus suddenly died from an illness, possibly related to the Antonine Plague. Marcus Aurelius was left to rule the empire alone, carrying the full burden of leadership on his shoulders. Although they were different in many ways, Marcus mourned the loss of his adoptive brother, with whom he had shared the weight of imperial rule for nearly a decade. Chapter 4. The Marcomannic Wars. As the Antonine Plague ravaged the Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius faced an even greater challenge from beyond its borders, the threat of barbarian invasions along the Danube frontier. What became known as the Marcomannic Wars would define the latter part of his reign, testing his resilience, leadership, and philosophical convictions. The northern border of the Roman Empire, marked by the Danube River, had long been a region of tension between Rome and the various Germanic tribes who lived beyond its limits. In the mid-160s AD, these tensions boiled over as tribes such as the Marcomanni, Quadi, and Sarmatians began to push into Roman territory. These incursions were driven by a combination of factors, including population pressures, internal tribal conflicts, and the weakness caused by the spread of the Antonine Plague. With Rome weakened and its military resources stretched thin, the barbarians saw an opportunity to strike. The conflict began in 166 AD, as the Marcomanni and their allies launched raids into Roman provinces, wreaking havoc on towns and settlements. The Roman military was caught off guard by the scale and intensity of the invasions, which threatened not only the border provinces, but also the heart of the empire itself. One of the most alarming moments came when a group of Marcomanni even managed to breach Italy's northern defenses, penetrating as far as Aquileia, a city close to Rome, a rare and shocking occurrence for the empire. Despite these grave challenges, Marcus Aurelius remained steadfast in his leadership. The emperor, who had spent much of his life studying philosophy and governing from the capital, was now forced to take on the role of a warrior leader. Unlike many of his predecessors, Marcus did not shy away from the battlefield. He personally led military campaigns along the Danube, spending much of the remainder of his reign away from the comfort of Rome, living with his troops in the harsh conditions of the frontier. The Marcomannic Wars would drag on for over a decade, as the Romans sought to push the barbarian tribes back across the Danube and secure the empire's northern borders. Marcus Aurelius, while untrained as a military commander, proved to be a capable strategist. He reorganized the Roman legions, directing resources to where they were most needed and working to restore discipline within the ranks. Under his leadership, the Romans slowly regained the upper hand, winning key victories that helped to stabilize the situation. However, the war was not merely a series of military campaigns. For Marcus, it was also a time of deep personal reflection. While he was engaged in the brutal realities of warfare, he continued to write his Meditations, the philosophical work that has since become one of the most important texts in the Stoic tradition. Written during the long and grueling campaigns, the Meditations reflect Marcus's inner struggle to maintain his Stoic ideals in the face of hardship, loss, and uncertainty. In the Meditations, Marcus often grappled with the concept of fate and the fleeting nature of life. The Stoic philosophy, which taught that one must accept what is beyond one's control and focus only on one's own actions and character, provided Marcus with a framework for dealing with the immense pressures of ruling an empire at war. He reminded himself that his duty, first and foremost, was to serve the people of Rome, and that true greatness lay not in military victories, but in maintaining virtue and wisdom, even in the most difficult circumstances. One of the most famous episodes from the Marcomannic Wars was the so-called Miracle of the Rain, which took place during a particularly desperate battle. According to legend, Marcus's forces were surrounded by the Quadi, cut off from water and on the brink of defeat. As the story goes, a sudden and miraculous rainstorm broke out, quenching the thirst of the Roman soldiers and disheartening the enemy. Whether this event was the result of chance or divine intervention remains uncertain, but it became a powerful symbol of Marcus's resilience and his ability to overcome even the most dire situations. Despite the hardships, Marcus Aurelius remained committed to achieving a lasting peace. He sought to not only repel the invaders, but also to establish more stable relations with the tribes beyond the Danube. To this end, he pursued a combination of military force and diplomacy, negotiating treaties with some of the Germanic leaders while continuing to fight those who refused to cooperate. By 175 AD, the war seemed to be turning in Rome's favor, but just as victory was within reach, Marcus was forced to deal with an unexpected crisis. Avidius Cassius, a trusted general in the east, declared himself emperor and rebelled against Marcus's rule. The rebellion was short-lived, as Cassius was assassinated by his own troops before Marcus could confront him directly. But the event highlighted the growing fragility of the empire and the constant threat of internal division. Following the suppression of Cassius's rebellion, Marcus returned to the Danube to resume his campaigns. His goal was not only to secure Rome's borders, but to create a buffer zone by establishing Roman control over key territories beyond the Danube. This strategy, however, would be cut short by his untimely death. Marcus Aurelius spent the final years of his life in the cold and harsh conditions of the frontier, leading his troops and continuing his philosophical reflections. His health, weakened by years of war and the pressures of leadership, began to fail, and in 180 AD, Marcus Aurelius died in Vindobona, modern-day Vienna. His death marked the end of the Pax Romana, a long period of relative peace and stability in the Roman Empire, and his passing would pave the way for the troubled reign of his son, Commodus. Chapter 5. The Meditations, a Stoic Masterpiece. In the midst of war, plague, and personal hardship, Marcus Aurelius found solace in the practice that had guided him since his youth, philosophy. While leading military campaigns against the barbarian tribes along the Danube, Marcus continued his lifelong habit of reflecting on the principles of Stoicism, a philosophy that emphasized virtue, self-control, and the acceptance of life's inevitable challenges. His reflections would later be compiled into what is now known as the Meditations, one of the most enduring philosophical works in history. The Meditations, originally written as private notes, were never intended for publication. They were deeply personal reflections, meant to help Marcus remain grounded and focused on his moral duty during the most difficult moments of his reign. Written in Greek, the language of philosophy, rather than Latin, they were a way for Marcus to engage with the Stoic teachings that had shaped his worldview. These writings, composed over several years while on military campaigns, reveal a ruler who constantly sought to live according to his ideals, despite the immense pressures of leadership. At the heart of the Meditations is the Stoic idea that the only true good in life is virtue, and that external circumstances, wealth, power, pleasure, or pain, are ultimately beyond our control. What matters most is how we respond to these circumstances. For Marcus, the practice of Stoicism was a way to cultivate inner peace and strength, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. One of the key themes of the Meditations is the concept of impermanence. Marcus often reminded himself of the fleeting nature of life, power, and material wealth. In one passage, he writes, "Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. We are but a moment in time." This recognition of life's transience was central to Stoic thought, and it helped Marcus maintain his composure in the face of personal and political crises. By accepting the inevitability of change and loss, he was able to focus on what truly mattered: living with virtue and integrity. Throughout the Meditations, Marcus repeatedly emphasizes the importance of duty and responsibility. As emperor, he was acutely aware of the enormous burden he carried. He saw his role not as a source of personal power or glory, but as a sacred duty to the people of Rome. In one entry, he writes, "Do your duty without fuss or complaint. Do it willingly. You are here to serve, not to be served." For Marcus, ruling the Roman Empire was an act of service, and his commitment to Stoicism provided him with the strength to endure the many hardships that came with leadership. Despite the weight of his responsibilities, Marcus also recognized the importance of maintaining a calm and measured demeanor. He often reflected on the value of equanimity, the ability to remain balanced and unaffected by external events. In one passage, he reminds himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This Stoic principle of focusing only on what is within one's control became a guiding force in Marcus's life, allowing him to navigate the turbulence of his reign with poise and clarity. The personal tone of the Meditations reveals a man who constantly struggled to live up to his own ideals. Marcus often chastises himself for failing to meet the high standards he set for himself, reminding us that even the most powerful figures in history are human. He writes about his frustration with his own weaknesses, his impatience with others, and the difficulty of maintaining virtue in a world filled with distractions and temptations. Yet, despite these struggles, he never wavered in his commitment to Stoicism. The work is a testament to his relentless pursuit of self-improvement, and his belief that living a good life is a continuous process of reflection and growth. While the Meditations was deeply personal, its lessons are universal. The wisdom contained in its pages has resonated with readers for centuries, offering guidance on how to live a meaningful and fulfilling life. Marcus's reflections on duty, virtue, and the transient nature of existence have inspired philosophers, leaders, and individuals seeking inner peace in a chaotic world. His ability to apply Stoic philosophy to the practical challenges of ruling an empire makes the Meditations not only a philosophical treatise, but also a timeless manual for leadership and ethical decision-making. One of the most profound aspects of the Meditations is Marcus's acceptance of death. For a man who had seen war, disease, and personal loss, death was an ever-present reality. Yet, rather than fear it, Marcus embraced the Stoic view that death was a natural part of life, no different from birth or growth. He writes, "Death is a release from the impressions of the senses, and from desires that make us their puppets, and from the vagaries of the mind, and from the hard service of the flesh." This perspective on death gave Marcus the strength to face his own mortality with dignity and calm, knowing that his life, like everything else, was part of a larger natural order. Chapter 6. Family and Personal Struggles. While Marcus Aurelius is best known for his philosophical reflections and leadership, his personal life was filled with its own set of challenges, heartaches, and responsibilities. Despite his Stoic composure, Marcus faced profound difficulties in his family life, including the loss of several children, the strain of balancing family duties with the demands of ruling an empire, and the troublesome future of his heir, Commodus. Marcus Aurelius married Faustina the Younger, a woman of noble birth and the daughter of Emperor Antoninus Pius in 145 AD. Their union was a political one, aimed at strengthening alliances between Rome's most powerful families, but by all accounts, it was also a loving partnership. Together, Marcus and Faustina had a large family, with 13 children in total. However, their family life was marked by tragedy. Only 5 of their children survived to adulthood. The loss of so many children was a source of great sorrow for Marcus, who, despite his Stoic beliefs, must have felt the pain of these personal losses deeply. His philosophy, which emphasized the acceptance of fate and the natural course of life, helped him cope with these tragedies. Stoicism teaches that death is part of the natural order, and that one must accept it without excessive grief or despair. In the Meditations, Marcus often reflects on the impermanence of life, reminding himself to embrace whatever comes, good or bad, with equanimity. In one poignant passage, he writes, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." The greatest challenge of Marcus's personal life, however, was the future of his son and successor, Commodus. From an early age, it was clear that Commodus was not like his father. While Marcus Aurelius was deeply introspective, disciplined, and committed to Stoic virtues, Commodus exhibited none of these traits. He was impulsive, reckless, and uninterested in the philosophical principles that guided Marcus's life. Nevertheless, Marcus, ever the dutiful father and ruler, did his best to prepare Commodus for the throne. In 177 AD, Marcus elevated Commodus to the position of co-emperor, a decision that has been widely criticized by historians. It was unusual for Marcus, who was known for his wisdom and foresight, to choose such an unfit successor. However, as a Stoic, Marcus believed in accepting the hand that fate had dealt him. He saw it as his duty to ensure a smooth transition of power and to avoid the potential chaos that could arise from leaving the empire without a clear heir. He had hoped that, with time and guidance, Commodus might mature into a capable leader. Unfortunately, Marcus's hopes for Commodus were never realized. After Marcus's death in 180 AD, Commodus's rule quickly descended into corruption and tyranny. The young emperor abandoned many of his father's policies and engaged in extravagant displays of power, even fighting in the arena as a gladiator. His reign marked the beginning of a decline in the stability and prosperity that Rome had enjoyed under the 5 good emperors. A period of relative peace and success that ended with Marcus Aurelius. Marcus's personal struggles were not limited to his children. His wife, Faustina, though loved by Marcus, was often the subject of scandalous rumors. Historical sources from the time, though often unreliable, accused her of infidelity and plots against her husband. Whether these rumors were true or mere gossip, Marcus remained steadfast in his support and affection for Faustina throughout their marriage. After her death in 175 AD, Marcus honored her memory by deifying her, an honor typically reserved for emperors. He had temples built in her name and ensured that she would be remembered as a goddess in the Roman pantheon. Despite the heartaches of his personal life, Marcus Aurelius remained committed to his role as both a father and a husband, balancing these responsibilities with his duties as emperor. His Stoic beliefs provided him with the framework to manage these personal losses and disappointments, reminding him that all things in life, including family, are subject to the natural order of change and impermanence. In his writings, Marcus often reflected on the challenges of fatherhood and leadership. He knew that, as emperor, his actions would set the tone for the empire, and he tried to impart his values to his children, particularly to Commodus. Yet, he also understood that even the best-laid plans do not always come to fruition, and that fate, not human will, ultimately decides the course of events. Chapter 7. The Death of Marcus Aurelius and His Legacy. In the winter of 180 A.D., as the harsh winds swept across the Roman frontier along the Danube River, Marcus Aurelius, the Philosopher Emperor, found himself nearing the end of his remarkable life. For years, he had led the Roman Empire through times of war, plague, and internal strife, all while steadfastly maintaining his commitment to the principles of Stoicism. Now, as his health began to fail, Marcus prepared himself for the inevitable, reflecting on the impermanence of life and the legacy he would leave behind. The final years of Marcus Aurelius's reign were spent leading military campaigns against the barbarian tribes along the Danube, primarily the Marcomanni and the Quadi. Despite the difficulties of warfare and the grueling conditions, Marcus refused to abandon his troops, remaining with them on the front lines. His health, however, had been deteriorating for some time, weakened by the strain of ruling an empire and the ongoing challenges of the Antonine Plague. By early 180 A.D., it was clear that his time was coming to an end. On his deathbed in the city of Vindobona, modern-day Vienna, Marcus Aurelius showed the same calm and acceptance of fate that had defined his life. According to ancient accounts, Marcus's last moments were spent surrounded by his advisors and military commanders, where he calmly gave instructions for the future of the empire. His death, unlike the violent or sudden ends that befell many Roman emperors, was peaceful. He had lived a life guided by reason and virtue, and he accepted death as part of the natural order of existence, an inevitability that even the most powerful ruler could not escape. Marcus Aurelius passed away on March 17, 180 A.D., at the age of 58, leaving the empire in the hands of his son and co-emperor Commodus. His death marked the end of the era known as the Pax Romana, a long period of relative peace and stability that had begun with Augustus and continued through the reigns of the 5 good emperors. Marcus was the last of these emperors, and with his passing, the Roman Empire would enter a new and more tumultuous phase. The transition of power to Commodus, however, was far from smooth. Unlike his father, Commodus lacked the discipline, wisdom, and philosophical grounding that had defined Marcus's reign. Despite Marcus's efforts to prepare his son for the responsibilities of leadership, Commodus quickly abandoned many of his father's policies and embraced a life of excess, indulgence, and self-glorification. His reign would be marked by corruption, cruelty, and instability, and historians often regard him as the beginning of Rome's decline. In the centuries that followed, Marcus Aurelius's reputation as a philosopher and ruler grew. His personal writings, known as the Meditations, survived through the ages, becoming one of the most influential works of Stoic philosophy. While Marcus had intended these writings to be private reflections, they were eventually copied and circulated, providing readers with a window into the mind of a ruler who grappled with the challenges of leadership, mortality, and virtue. In the Meditations, Marcus wrote about the importance of living in accordance with nature, accepting what cannot be changed, and always striving to act with wisdom, justice, and humility. As time passed, Marcus Aurelius became known not only as a great Roman emperor, but as a symbol of the philosopher king, a ruler who combined intellectual depth with practical governance. His reign was seen as a golden age, a time when Rome was led by a man who sought not personal glory, but the betterment of the state and the well-being of his people. Marcus's legacy as the Philosopher Emperor has had a lasting impact, influencing leaders, thinkers, and scholars throughout history. His approach to leadership, grounded in Stoic principles, has inspired countless individuals seeking to balance power with morality and action with reflection. In modern times, the Meditations continues to be read and studied by those seeking guidance on how to live a good and meaningful life in the face of adversity. Though Marcus Aurelius was a man of his time, the wisdom he imparted transcends the boundaries of the Roman Empire. His reflections on life, death, and duty are timeless, offering insights that remain relevant today. In a world often filled with uncertainty and conflict, Marcus's example serves as a reminder that true greatness lies not in wealth or power, but in the strength of character and the pursuit of virtue. As we conclude the story of Marcus Aurelius, we are left with the enduring image of a man who, despite being one of the most powerful rulers in history, lived a life guided by wisdom, humility, and virtue. Marcus's reign, filled with challenges both personal and political, was marked by his unwavering commitment to Stoic philosophy, a set of principles that taught him to embrace the natural flow of life and to seek peace amidst turmoil. His journey as emperor, from the quiet reflections of his youth to the battlefronts of the Marcomannic Wars, revealed a leader who balanced the demands of ruling an empire with the deep, contemplative practice of philosophy. Throughout it all, Marcus sought not to impose his will on the world, but to act in harmony with the greater forces of nature, accepting each challenge as an opportunity to grow in virtue. In the Meditations, Marcus left behind a timeless gift, a window into his thoughts, his struggles, and his wisdom. Though written in solitude, those reflections have resonated with generations of readers, offering a guide on how to live a good life, face adversity with courage, and find inner peace through acceptance. His personal quest to live in accordance with Stoic ideals became his greatest legacy, one that has endured far beyond the boundaries of his empire. Marcus Aurelius's reign may have ended centuries ago, but his teachings continue to inspire. His life stands as a reminder that true greatness is not found in power or riches, but in the pursuit of wisdom and the dedication to living with integrity, no matter the circumstances. As you reflect on the life of Marcus Aurelius, allow his words and his actions to guide you toward a path of peace, wisdom, and acceptance. Like the emperor himself, remember that in every moment we have the power to choose how we respond to the world around us. And in that choice lies the key to a life well lived.